On today's show, Olympic basketball starts this weekend, and we've got everything you need to know, including whether Team USA should be the overwhelming favorites, or if there's a looming threat to their chance to win gold. All of that and more on today's Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On NBA Friday. Wes Goldberg here with Adam Mares. However you're tuning in on YouTube, Odyssey, or your favorite podcast app, thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. This summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. ESPN ranked the top 25 players of the 21st century. We're going to pick holes in their list in a minute. First, the Olympics start this weekend, and Team USA are the heavy favorites to take gold. FanDuel has them at minus 400 to win gold. The next closest team is Canada at plus 1,000. Their first game is Sunday versus Serbia. They're 12.5-point favorites in that game against Nikola Jokic in Serbia. I want to talk about who the biggest challenger to Team USA could be, some Olympic X factors. But first, do you think Team USA should be this overwhelming of a favorite?
I do. And despite the fact that they have struggled a little bit in these exhibitions, these last two coming down to the final couple minutes against South Sudan, and then who was the last one, the most recent one? Germany. So despite those, I actually think that that's normal for exhibition. That's normal when you're trying to play 9 and 10 man rotations. When you get into the games, which by the way are shorter than NBA games, you're going to be able to play your key guys, which in this case are LeBron James and Steph Curry, and probably Anthony Davis, which we'll talk about here in a second. You're able to play those guys more minutes. There's more of an identity that develops over time, and they just don't have any weaknesses. Great defense, great athleticism, great shooting, great passing. This is one of the better Team USAs in my opinion.
Yeah, everybody keeps trying to pick holes in the Team USA. And it's like, well, does Joel Embiid play? Is he good enough? Does his game fit? They have dominated. They haven't lost an exhibition. It hasn't really mattered. It's sort of that thing where it's like, I remember when the Warriors had 5 Hall of Famers on their team, and it was like, yeah, but do they have enough shooting off the bench? You know, and it's like, who cares? You know, it's like they're but that's what we do. We have to find some sort of weakness. If Team USA is going to lose, why would they lose? But
by the way, they do have shooting off the bench on this team. Like that, unlike the Warriors, this team has
turns
a
out they're better
team
than the Dynasty
really
Warriors. Yeah. They have shooting everywhere. It's an awesome team. It fits well. It seems to be coached well. This is not the team that represented the country in FIBA last summer. For a lot of ways, they kind of plucked the best players off the FIBA team that finished 4th last summer. Said, okay, Anthony Edwards, Tyrese Halliburton, y'all were good. You could be part of the real Team USA team for the Olympics. You've got LeBron James coming back for the first time in 12 years. You got Steph Curry doing his first Olympic tour. Bam Adebayo, Anthony Davis. Like, you have coming off the bench. Jason Tatum coming off the bench. You have who just won a championship.
Right.
There's so much depth on this team, and they fit well, right? This isn't one of those. I even think back to like the Redeem team or something, like the 2008. Where you had like LeBron and like young LeBron, young D Wade, Kobe. I was established. Like all these, I don't know that team fit that well.
Yeah,
but they were still overwhelming favorites because the talent was so overwhelming. But this team has overwhelming talent, and the fit makes sense.
I think the number one advantage Team USA has had since the Redeem team has been athleticism. And that's the thing that one of the things that they've leaned into. A lot of your superstar players are super athletes as well. And they've had that, but they haven't always had the shooting or the defense or, you know, the right fits. And this team, I just think, one, a lot of these guys have been through the system. This isn't their first time playing in the Olympics or the first time playing for Team USA. So a lot of guys already are more familiar with international competition and the way the game is officiated. But to your point, I think that this team has more clarity as to who the guys are. And that was one of the good things to come out of these exhibitions being so close. You saw that this team is really built to go to LeBron James and play to his strengths. And with Steph Curry is kind of playing off him. And as great as all these guys are, it's nice when you have an identity and you know, okay, this is our bread and butter.
It's LeBron's team. It's Steph's team, right? Like that 2-man action is the sort of foundation of everything that this team does offensively. Defensively, they just fly around. They just do things that nobody else can do in terms of, you know, countries. But you're right about all that. Is there an X factor for you on Team USA?
There is, and I don't know if I should say it's Joel Embiid or Anthony Davis, because to
I was kind of
me,
going to the same place. Yeah.
the X factor is, who do you play as your big off the bench? And, I've been harsh on Joel Embiid with this criticism. I don't know that he is a guy that lends himself to a super team, that lends himself to, okay, we've got a bunch of guys that can score. How do we all kind of help each other? And this is a team where, quite frankly, they don't need Joel Embiid scoring very often. He'll have big scoring games, but they need him to be a defensive player. They need him to move the ball. They need him to rebound and to be a presence that puts pressure on the paint. Anthony Davis does all of those things, and I think at an even more versatile and more natural order. He's a guy that he's very comfortable stepping back to the fifth option role. And defensively, I think he's a level above Joel Embiid in terms of his versatility on the perimeter. So to me, that's the X factor, is how much do you play Davis and how much do you play Embiid?
That's it right there. And I think you're going to just start Joel Embiid. I think Steve Kerr is just going to do it.
Might even be a promise.
It might be a promise, right? You won the battle of his citizenship, and you kind of have to start him, but that doesn't mean you have to close games with him. Right. And we've already seen once or twice them close with Anthony Davis or Bam Adebayo at the end of these games. And with AD, you're absolutely right about all the perimeter stuff. The one thing I will say is his size, Joel Embiid's size, could be really important against a team like Serbia that has Jokic, or a team like Germany that's just sort of big in their front line, a team like France who has Gobert and Wembanyama. But it's not like Anthony Davis is small, and Anthony Davis probably has the most experience guarding Jokic in high-leverage situations over the last 2 NBA seasons.
For sure.
So that's something. And he's done pretty well, compared to other players in that position. So, yeah, I think Anthony Davis is definitely an option. Now, whether or not he starts or whatever, I don't know that he even cares, and he probably should.
I don't think he does.
Yeah, Joel Embiid might, but
I think Embiid does.
If he's closing games, I'm okay with that too.
Yeah, I think the other X factor for me is Kevin Durant, and it's funny to say, but Kevin Durant obviously has not been with the team, not been participating with that calf strain. So you look at that, he's such a disruptive force. Obviously a great player, but like Joel Embiid, he's most comfortable when he's the center of attention, gets the ball, gets to do what he wants. On this team, they've established an identity. So is KD able to just come in and be a corner 3-point spacer, the greatest corner 3-point spacer in NBA history? Does he want to come and do, or FIBA history, I should say? Or does he want to be a little bit more than that? Is there an off chemistry? I mean, if Team USA, here's the thing, Team USA doesn't have weaknesses. So if they're going to lose, it's going to be a loss of identity, something that happened to them where they didn't know what they were supposed to do in the moment. And Kevin Durant not playing represents an X factor there.
So he practiced with the team this weekend. Steve Kerr said it was going to be a collaboration on whether or not when they determine if he's going to play Sunday morning against Serbia. I don't know what a collaborate. That just means guys talking to each other.
I think so.
What that means? Okay, all right. So very good. If we're at the point of whether or not he's going to play on Sunday, he's going to play at some point, Sunday or not. At some point, it seems like he's going to play. And we're talking here, and I'm like, the thing we were talking about earlier about the identity right now is LeBron and Steph Curry in that 2-man game offensively. Yep. It might have been better for Team USA for Kevin Durant to not be ready to go to start this thing, because it was basically Durant who, if he wins his 4th gold medal, is going to be one of the great Team USA players of all time.
Right.
And it was going to be his team with Steph and with LeBron, but with Durant being sidelined for the start of this thing, it kind of allowed Steph and LeBron to develop the identity. And now Kevin Durant can just walk in if he's willing, but there's an opportunity for him to just sort of walk in and be sort of better Olympic Melo, right? Where you do just kind of space the floor, unless he wants to kind of have the ball in his hands a lot, which who knows, but, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. He could probably anchor that second unit offense in that way too, whether or not he starts or comes off the bench or whatever, how they stagger the minutes. But yeah, I think it might've been a good thing that he was hurt, because it allowed them to establish that identity. And then Durant just walks in and says, yep, I'll be here shooting threes when you need me.
If it works out that way, they're going to win. And I think it will work out this way, but they're going to win by 20 points almost every game.
Who's the biggest challenger for them, if you have one? So I'll go through the odds really quick, just to these top teams. USA, I already mentioned, they're minus 400. Canada is second at plus 1,000. France, plus 1,500, even though they didn't look awesome in the exhibitions. Serbia, plus 1,500, so same odds as France. Germany is plus 2,800, the team that won gold in the World Cup. Or gold. They won, is it gold? Is it medals in the World Cup?
Yep, it's medals.
Okay. All right. Last summer. And then Greece with Giannis at plus 3,200, and then you got the rest of the teams. So of this group, who do you think is the biggest challenger to U.S.?
So I actually don't think it's Canada. And I know I might be overthinking this. I mean, let's be honest here. But I think that Canada plays like Team USA in a lot of ways. You know, they're guys that are used to the NBA style of play and they play that. And if you're going to upset Team USA, and it would be an upset, I think it's good because you're going to be more versed in FIBA and the differences and the nuances of what makes them different. And that's why I think Serbia and Germany are the two teams that I look at and say, okay, they have a chance. They both have size because athletically and just the size that Team USA possesses in their front court is going to overwhelm a lot of teams that just can't keep up, including Canada, by the way, who has Kelly Olynyk, Powell, not necessarily guys that you think are going to be able to go up against Anthony Davis and Joel Embiid, but they also just have the institutional knowledge of, okay, here's the differences that Team USA is not familiar with, and we can make this, it's almost guerrilla warfare. We could make this like ugly to level the playing field, and both of those teams are proven. By the way, like you mentioned, Germany, gold medal winner. Serbia has been through a lot of battles and has, I believe, the second or third most gold medals in international history behind U.S. and then Soviet Union. So I think both those teams have a chance.
So the case for Canada would be Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, if he's on one, could be the best player on the court, right? That's not out of the realm of the possibility between Team USA and Canada. And Kelly Olynyk, he's not the player that Joel Embiid or Anthony Davis are in the NBA. But if you think about how you need to beat the U.S., you kind of want to pull their centers away from the basket, challenge Joel Embiid, who's going to be in that drop, bring Anthony Davis out away from the rim where he's protecting the paint. And Kelly Olynyk at least conceivably could do that if he hits 5 3-pointers in a game. That can.
He's got no hope on the boards though, or inside.
No, I'm just trying to make the case. I do agree with you though, and the point you made about that's basically also an NBA team is a great one. That's a great point, but. I kind of look at Germany too. Serbia, I agree with you. Germany also, like they played. Germany played Team USA tough in that last exhibition. They got Obst, who is basically the Steph Curry of the rest of the world.
Yep.
They've got size, but like we talk about functional size a lot in the NBA. I don't think we talk about just like mean, gritty, physical size. And the Wagner brothers are mean as hell. Like they are going to elbow you and bump you and do all the things that Team USA I don't think really wants to do during their summer break, so to speak. So they just won the whole thing last summer. Like, it's basically the same team coming back. So I think people are sleeping on Germany. They're plus 2,800. That's crazy to me.
I think that's a good value bet. I mean, I think Team USA is minus 400. Also a good value bet.
The best value.
I think that's still the best value. But if you're going for an upset, I think Germany and Serbia have a chance.
All right, let's move on. ESPN ranked the top 25 players of the 21st century. Where did they get it wrong? We're going to talk about that next on Locked On NBA. Today's episode of Locked On NBA is brought to you by FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop, but as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games, and the sports aren't sportsing like they want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime that I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. And luckily, the Olympics are coming up, so we do have some sports going on. We already mentioned the odds there. The other thing that FanDuel did was just release their over-unders, Adam, for NBA win totals next year. So I'm going to ask you a question. They've got the Knicks at 53.5 wins and the Sixers at 52.5 wins. Which team do you feel more comfortable laying some money down and going the over on?
Which, say those two again?
The Knicks at 53.5 and the Sixers at 52.5. If you had to bet the over on one of them, which one would you be more comfortable?
Oh, man, that's a tough one. That's a tough one. The injuries with the Knicks seem like the safer bet, but the injury, I'm going to go Knicks. They have some depth.
I'm going Sixers.
All right, there you go.
So we disagree. Yeah, you know what? Joel Embiid was hurt last year. He's usually hurt in the playoffs, though, not the regular season. That was a little weird. So I don't think he's going to miss that many games, Paul George. I like the Sixers on the over. Okay. You can make your decision. Head over to FanDuel.com. Start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Best way to support the show. Subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app. ESPN ranked their top 25 players of the 21st century. Why did they do that? I don't know. It's just a thing to do, I suppose. I'm going to run through them, and we could just sort of debate it. Okay. Are they right? Are they wrong? Number one, you want to take a guess?
I think it should be LeBron. What did they put?
Yeah, they had Shaq. I'm just kidding.
I think the number one was easy.
Yeah. Number two is probably pretty easy, too. Well, I'm not going to make you do this the whole list. For Number 2 is Kobe. Number 3 is Steph.
So it's interesting that those guys go 2, 3, and the order, you know, I mean, I think it's right as well. I think it's right as well. But it is, I always am interested to see where Steph Curry ranks on these types of lists.
I wonder, so I think Kobe is actually aged better, right? Because of his influence on the game.
Steph Curry's influence on the game is pretty substantial as well, I would say.
Right? And that's kind of what I was going to get to here. It's like we're so removed from Kobe now.
Yeah.
And we're not as removed from Steph. He's obviously still playing. That maybe Steph 10 years from now, when they do this next list for, again, maybe Steph would say, well, they might look at the NBA and say, well, now everybody just plays like Steph. Every guard that's like shorter than 6'5" just plays like Steph now. And so maybe he goes up. But, 4-time champion, Kobe 5-time champion. If we just want to boil it down to that, maybe that's what gives him the edge.
Could be.
Rounding out the top 5 is Duncan and Shaq. I don't have a problem with those.
I think it's a very fascinating top 5, though. I will say that. I think LeBron is clear number 1, but where you go 2, 3, 4, and 5, I think you would have people that would put those in any order. And I think there's a case for any of those guys in any order. The Duncan versus Kobe thing is always interesting, right? Because they both had kind of equal success. Tim Duncan's teams were never bad. I always think that's an important thing. Like floor raiser versus ceiling raiser, his teams were always 50-win teams.
They won over a longer period of time, where Kobe basically won on. It was like 2 different teams, but in the same sort of generation. It was Shaq, and then he leaves, and then a couple breaks in terms of years, and then boom, Pau Gasol's there, but Tim Duncan was just winning across decades, and like you said, I mean, literally winning championships until the very end. So, I would be okay moving Tim Duncan up. I could be, and I'm with you. You could put this in any order. You could move Shaq up. I think we've almost forgotten how dominant that guy was and how important he was to the league. Here's where it gets a little weird to me. They've got Kevin Garnett at 6. I'm gonna just list the top 10. I'm gonna round up the top 10, and we can kind of pick the holes. They have Garnett at 6, Jokic at 7, D Wade at 8, Kevin Durant at 9, and Dirk Nowitzki at 10.
Yeah.
I think, and I can't believe I'm saying this because Kevin Garnett was one of my favorite players growing up. He was sort of like a 7-footer doing all those things, captured my imagination, taught me what basketball could be. I love Kevin Garnett. He is way too high on this list. There is no way he should be over Jokic, right? Just the resume doesn't compare already, and Jokic isn't even done yet. And he shouldn't be over Dwayne Wade. Because if we're doing championships at the top 5 as sort of being the separator here, Dwayne Wade has 3 rings and Garnett has 1. And I know that it's not, I'm not arguing that it's just rings, but there's an inconsistency in this list. I don't think that there's any doubt. Kevin Garnett was an awesome player, but Dwayne Wade was so much better and at his peak. He was arguably the best player in the league for 2 years, 2008 to 2010. And I don't know. I think his accomplishments are way better than Kevin Garnett's.
It's interesting because Dwayne Wade, his career is so unique in that he had his first peak and then he had the Heatles era. And it was over, not long after that, or at least, the prime of it. The Garnett piece, I'm with you though. Like I love Kevin Garnett, so it feels terrible for me to kind of like want to knock him down here. But with both him and Kevin Durant, we kind of put championship full stop. Okay, he won a championship. And I always think, yes, but what were the other seasons, the non-championship seasons like? Were you the main guy? Were you doing these things? And I just look at Dirk had one of the greatest carry of the team on his back championships of all time. I think Jokic had one of the great carry a championship team on your back all time. Dwayne Wade obviously had that in 2006. So I just look at that a little bit different. I mean, one of the questions I always ask myself is, could this guy have also won 2 championships with the 2015 Golden State Warriors? And if the answer is yes, then I go like, all right, then let's not use that accolades against some of the other guys. So for me, I agree that Garnett and Durant would probably be at the end of this list, not at the top.
All right, I'm glad. So we got our guys, Jokic and D Wade,
Look at us
moving up. Who knew? Who thought that we would have done that? And I just want to say, I understand that Kevin Garnett has a Defensive Player of the Year. They left out on the list that Dwayne Wade was the scoring champion, which is the opposite of Defensive Player of the Year, and you just leave that off. That's an important accomplishment. We can celebrate that. All right, so then let's go
Marcus
top
Smart
15.
also has a Defensive Player of the Year award, just for reference.
We don't. I mean, yes, and we don't need to bring that up because that should have been Bam's. Rounding out the top 15, Giannis at 11, Steve Nash at 12, Harden at 13, Jason Kidd at 14, and Chris Paul at 15. I know where I disagree. Where do you disagree?
Well, I actually think Giannis has a strong case for being up in the top 10
Yep.
and maybe knocking one of these guys, other guys out, Kevin Durant, Dirk Nowitzki, or in my opinion, Kevin Garnett. So one of those guys. But the other thing that I thought was very interesting, I mean, James Harden, I think because he is not beloved, is just placed so much further down the list than even than Steve Nash. Like James Harden did what Steve Nash did and scored 30 points on top of it. So I think
Right.
because he's so hated, he gets discounted a little bit. And the fact that I think he's kind of marked as a loser when, you know what, some of the guys on this list also, technically did not win.
Yeah, it's not fair when they're listing the accomplishments on this list. Some players have the Hall of Fame thing,
Right.
and the players who are still playing are obviously not yet in the Hall of Fame, but they're all going to be Hall of Famers. That's why they're on this list. So I feel like that shouldn't even count. Harden should be above Steve Nash, and I love Steve Nash, but
Right.
you just look at the thing on paper. I also think Chris Paul should be over Jason Kidd, and I do wonder if the only reason Jason Kidd is one spot over Chris Paul is because he won a championship with the Mavericks in 2011. It's the only reason I could think of.
I think so too. And it is strange.
All right, let's round it out. Kawhi Leonard at 16, Manu Ginobili at 17,
Interesting.
Allen Iverson at 18, Anthony Davis at 19, Ray Allen at 20.
Man, this is where it gets. I've done enough of these lists to know that the further away you get from the top, the harder it is, right?
Yes.
Because now you're starting to split more and more hairs. So I definitely have a different order to this list. I think Kawhi Leonard is, of all these guys, the guy that feels the most like he belongs in the tier above him. In that top 15, he was a two-time champion and the best player on both of those teams. So he's the guy who goes up there. But then after that, Manu, Iverson, Davis, Ray Allen, 3 completely different players. How do you quantify them against each other? It's so hard.
It's really hard, and I kind of want to move AI up, but it's really hard to do that when one-time MVP, bunch of all-stars, super important, never won a championship, but it's AI, and you feel like you just. But I kind of doing the same thing where it's like, well, it's Steve Nash, but on paper, James Harden should be above him. Tony Parker at 21, Draymond Green at 22, Russell Westbrook at 23. Why is he in a Lakers jersey in your picture?
I know,
ESPN?
I saw that. Yeah.
Pau Gasol at 24 and Luka Doncic at 25. I'll just ask you one question.
Yeah.
We don't have to debate the order anymore. Is it too early for Luka to be on this list?
Probably not, just given how good he's been. I mean, I just don't think you can quibble with it. I'm curious who who is left out. I haven't put any thought into this, but like who the next guy in would be. But Luka, look, they did this to Jokic on the 75th anniversary top 75 team, and everybody agreed that he's certainly going to be on this list, but we have to let his career play out. I'm glad they did the opposite with Luka, and we're like, we clearly know he's going to be one of the top 25 players, so we'll put him in there a little bit early.
Other than Jaylen Brown, who's the most upset about not being on this list?
It's interesting. I was trying to think that. I mean, you have like Tracy McGrady, you've got
Chris Bosh.
Yeah, I don't think so. Chris Bosh, I think, is fine not being on this. A very good player,
okay with
but
it. Yeah,
I don't know. I'd have to see a list of. I'd have to see the list of
Melo?
the. Yeah, Carmelo would have a case for this. I mean, again, I think that I wouldn't put him above any of the names on the list currently. Draymond Green's an interesting one for me. And also Tony Parker.
Clay.
It shows you Tony Parker's a phenomenal player and deserves to be on the list, but it also shows you what winning does. For both of those guys, same careers, but they just come up short in the finals every year. They're not on this list, but you win a bunch, and all of a sudden a high-level role players or star/role players make it into the top 25.
Yep. Dwight Howard might have a.
Oh, Dwight Howard definitely has a case. I didn't think of him. He definitely should be on this list.
Yep. All right. So LeBron James is going to be the Olympic flag bearer for Team USA. I'm going to ask you, Adam, and I'm surprising this question to you. Who would be the Olympic flag bearer if we did just the United States Olympic and it had to be somebody in Denver sports history? Think about it.
Oh, it's
and you get to answer it next. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. With last-minute deals, save up to 60% when buying last-minute for sports, concerts, comedy theater, and other events in your area. Game Time offers all-in pricing. Toggling this feature on shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout And with Seat Views, you get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with their lowest price guarantee. If there's a lower price, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. And with Game Time ticket coverage, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDON NBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute deals. Lowest price guaranteed. Thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. All right, so LeBron is the Olympic flag bearer for Team USA. Let's say we did a competition within America. Every state had its own flag bearer. You're in Denver. You represent the city. I was going to say the state of Denver, the city of Denver. Who would be the all-time sports flag bearer for Colorado?
This one's easy. It's John Elway. Are you kidding me? He's
Okay.
the
It's
immortal
still Elway.
athlete in Denver sports. So it definitely would be Elway.
Who would be the runners-up? Like where
More
does
interesting
Jokic?
question.
Is it Jokic? Is it?
So
who's
I
your
think
running back for the
Jokic has
Broncos?
I think Jokic has a case for becoming the greatest athlete in Denver sports history or team sport history. And so I think that it could be him, but you're looking at Terrell Davis. You're looking at Joe Sakic, Patrick Waugh, arguably the greatest goalie in NHL history. So there's a handful of candidates there, but Elway to me is the guy that both is thought of that way, but also culturally relevant in that way. I mean, the first NFL championship, the first Broncos championship in the city's history is just the biggest thing and most important thing that's happened here.
Who's considered the greatest coach in Denver sports?
That's another good one. I would guess Mike Shanahan.
Yeah, that's probably it.
Yeah, that'd probably be him.
So if I were doing this for South Florida, Miami, it comes down to Dwayne Wade or Dan Marino. And it kind of depends on how old you are, how you would answer this.
Yeah.
The thing that Dwayne Wade has that Dan Marino doesn't is 3 championships. Dan Marino never won a Super Bowl.
Right.
But if you tell a 45-year-old that Dwayne Wade is the greatest Miami athlete of all time, they'll throw you into the Atlantic Ocean. So, but it's Dwayne Wade, and it's not even close to me. He's got the championships, he's got the rings, baby. It's Dwayne Wade. He's our Olympic flag bearer, and I think he would actually do it. I don't know that Dan Marino would show up for that job. All right, so it is Friday, which means it's time to count down to the weekend of Power Rankings.
I am a system player.
Go Power Rankings. Go Power Rankings.
This week, we're counting down the top 5 sports documentaries, NBA documentaries that we want made that don't exist. We're doing this because it's being reported that Disney is developing a documentary on the bubble, which will be very interesting. So yeah, I thought we can count down top 5 NBA documentaries we want made that don't exist. A couple of honorable mentions here. The 2013 draft. Just want to know more about what happened there, the process. Cleveland taking Anthony Bennett, number 1. Giannis and Gobert from overseas going later in the first round. The best players in that draft going later in the first round. Would love to get behind the scenes. What was Utah and Milwaukee doing? How did they scout those players? Kind of started the whole European wave where people started scouting those areas a little bit more seriously than they had prior. So honorable mention there. The other honorable mention is Jimmy Butler's Minnesota practice, the infamous. But Jeff Teague on his podcast is pretty much already doing this, so that's why it's only an honorable mention.
Hilarious storyteller, by the way.
Oh, he's great. He's great. So, number 5. The season after the bubble, which I found way more interesting almost than the bubble itself. Teams had to fill rosters with G League guys. Remember that we had that next wave in December and January, and it seemed like every team's half their roster was just out with COVID. And so these G League guys and these amateurs were basically just getting NBA spots for 10 days and all these things. They had to play in empty arenas, getting tested
terrible
multiple
memories
times a
you're
day.
bringing back. You want to watch this?
Not now, but you're right. Eventually, maybe like 20 years from now. Number 4 is the process, because
interesting.
So much happened, and I think it's one of those things where so many things happened that we forgot what happened and how much actually did happen.
Right.
And I think a few years from now, it would be very beneficial to kind of go back and say, "Oh, wait, I forgot about Zaire Smith. That was weird." Markelle Fultz, Ben Simmons, all of that stuff. You know, the whole burner account with Colangelo and all this stuff. Like, so much was going on. I think we need a documentary to kind of synthesize the entire thing. Number 3, and this was your idea, the different leagues around the world. So we know so much about the NBA. You and I are in NBA locker rooms. I feel like we just know the operating procedure for NBA basketball in the NBA season. What we don't really know that much about is other leagues. And with the basketball becoming more and more of an international sports and the NBA embracing that more and more, I think it would be really helpful to kind of spend some time, like that quarterbacks documentary, except for everybody being in the NBA. You just pick a different player in different leagues. You can have somebody in the WNBA. You have somebody overseas. You can have somebody playing for Mega Basket, all these things, and we just follow these characters forever. So this would be more of like a Netflix series, but I think it would really work. You were telling me like in Japan they have an 8-pointer? Like,
in Korea, I believe in North Korea they have an 8. Yeah.
Is that just from the other arena that you shoot it from?
I don't even remember. There's some leagues with some very funny rules, some very interesting rules.
So I want more. I want to know more about that. Number 2, Kevin Durant's last season in Golden State. I just think we need one. We need about the punch with, not the punch, the argument with Draymond Green during that Clippers game. I want to know exactly what happened. I was actually there for it. So I don't know.
And you still want the documentary.
And I still want the documentary. I want more. This is probably too high.
I don't know, man. You know what? This is one thing that maybe 10 years from now you really want to go back, like The Last Dance. When there's enough distance, it's like, hey, let's revisit this now.
The one I really want, and this should be no surprise to you nor anybody listening, I want a documentary on the Big 3 Miami Heat.
This is number 1. I respect you for making the list the way I make the list.
Yeah, I'm sorry there's no Denver Nuggets documentary up here yet. Maybe Michael Malone's drunken speech at the championship parade. We get a whole documentary on that. But the Big 3, such a cultural event after the decision. Media, fans, unbelievably harsh and mean to the team. This was before we kind of all agreed, let's be nicer to NBA players as sort of as media. The pressure that they faced and then losing to the finals that first year. And then how they responded.
Oh, this is a hero's journey. Okay.
For sure. Of course. What else would it be?
I thought it was going to be an honest documentary, but okay, I see what we're doing.
No, it's going to be more like The Last Dance, where Michael Jordan is just untouchable. And I'm going to be in Michael Jordan's seat, just telling people with a cigar and a glass of tequila. You get young Spo before he was considered like the guy that he is now. You get LeBron James at his peak. You got Pat Riley looming over everything. Dwayne Wade taking a back seat, Chris Bosh kind of making the NBA impact, kind of coming back over from Toronto, all these things. I just think there's so many great characters that could be involved. So that's the documentary that I want made. Any gripes with this one like we had with the ESPN list?
A million.
Very good.
A million gripes.
You don't get time to tell me.
Let us know in the comments what NBA documentary you want to see. I'm curious.
That's right. Thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Everydayers, make sure you're subscribed on YouTube, Odyssey, and wherever you get your podcasts. Have a great weekend, everybody.